Alright, so this is pretty much just gonna be a Sorc introduction. This is not meant to be an in-depth fucking intro. This is literally just me gonna give you the rundown, the essentials of a class, right? Essentially just doing a summary of Sorc, as well as the Awakening Sorc, the Succession Sorc. This is pretty much for people who are possibly interested in Sorc, or, thinking about re-rolling to it. Maybe the class looks cool. And outside of that, pretty much doing the rundown of how they do in terms of the 1v1, the PvE, and as well as the small, large scale. So yeah, I'm gonna just fucking get into the shit. So with the Sorceress, or pretty much known as Sorc, you have two different ways you can go into Sorc. You have the Awakening, you have the Succession, right? I'm gonna be first talking about the Awakening first and foremost, and pretty much giving you a rundown of what it is. Which, by the way, Sorc overall is an assassin class, so if you are kind of into the assassin mobility kind of class, the class definitely has some teleporting like abilities. It's got purple shit, it's got all sorts of fucking shit you might be into, I don't know. It might be up your alley. But yeah, no, so Awakening, right? So Awakening is essentially your close range assassin. It's got a scythe, it's got fucking aimlet, right? While the Succession is a hybrid of an assassin, right? It's an assassin up close. It's also sometimes a mage, sometimes a semi-long range. It does give you a lot of options to do that, so it's a little bit of a mix. Whereas Awakening is just strictly close range assassin that has crazy movement. Succession is closer to like a hybrid of assassin mobility with mage-like abilities. That's kind of the way I'd always describe Succession. So going into Awakening, I'm going to be talking about the 1v1, PvE, small, large scale. So with Awakening and 1v1s, I'm going to rank this by tiers, S, A, B, C, all that shit. So with 1v1, the 1v1's S tier. It is guaranteed the best 1v1er. Iframes. Movement is insane. It's very dynamic. Movement is literally half iframe, half, quick attacks, and sometimes essays, and sometimes just abilities that look like iframes, but they're really not. You mix all that in, and your opponent's just looking at someone who just literally teleports like it's fucking instant transmission on steroid. Like they literally can't hit you if you're good enough. As well as the combos are pretty clean. You mix it in with Awakening and Pre-Awakening a lot. Awakening, you'll find that it's literally you switching between Awakening and Pre-Awakening half of the time, to the extent that you have to be good enough to switch on command, do certain combos that require certain Awakening and Pre-Awakening to flow them correctly. As well as the skill ceiling is very high. It's definitely the highest in the game. Sorc is one of those classes that not only when you get in, the skill entry is going to be a bit rough because you have to get used to the playstyle. It seems weird at first, maybe the cancels and the combos and the movements are just, they don't register as quick because it's just not logically done. It's done in a method that you have to spend a lot of time to get down to muscle memory. After that, you could essentially just get away with fucking shit stomping everyone, once you're good enough, of course. It's also one of those classes that if you don't practice enough from time to time, even on, like, let's say a training dummy, you might lose a little bit of skill. Your muscle memory will still remain the same, but there's a lot of quick thinking involved in 1v1s, so the potential's there. If you pick Awakening in 1v1s, you're definitely going to have an easy time going against most classes. There are going to be some that's rough, but that doesn't mean it's not winnable. It gives you excellent movements, again, combos, skill ceiling is the highest. The longer time you've spent playing this class, you'll understand that there's a lot more to learn in terms of combos, movements, cancels, that basically you could see yourself becoming a god. Like if you truly play this class, without the exception of servers and shit like that, you could actually become the 1v1 king. No one could stop you if you were as good, right? If you played perfect, essentially. Now going into PvE, also S tier. Just simply because it's not that hard to do. It's essentially just you pre-buffing into your violation spam, where you just spin your fucking scythe over and over again, rinse and repeat. That's pretty much all you have to do. As well as it gets the job done. I mean, it's one of those classes that it doesn't really take too much to grind. We're not even talking gear strictly, we're just talking about movements, we're talking about skill rotation. Some people could say it's a bit repetitive, which understandably you are spamming the same ability after you pre-buff, which is, yeah, it's a bit, whatever, but I mean, if you're a person that just likes it because it gets the job done and it does a lot of damage and it's easy to learn, which it is mostly easy to learn to grind, then yeah, Awakening would be your setup. It's a lot easier to learn when it comes to grinding. And now for the last category, the discussion of small scale, large scale. This is pretty much your fights up to what, GVG 15-20 people to node wars that can span from 40-50 people to even siege, right? This is covering all aspects, small and large scale. It's also S tier, and I'm not bullshitting you. Sorc, you're gonna find is S tier basically in fucking everything. There's not a single thing that they're not in S tier. You are playing Sorc, you're essentially playing one of the best classes to ever fucking grace the surface of BDO. The class is just really good in every aspect. There's not a single thing that it's not good in. It does its job well. And when it comes to skirmishes, they are hard to catch. They have the abilities to allow them to go in and out of fights safely because of iframes, as well as this is one of the only classes that can actually 1vx like no one's fucking business. Because of the movement and the abilities and other, stupid shit that they have, it's one of the best classes to essentially 1v3, 1v5. Possibly if you're good enough and you're also good enough with good enough fucking frames, you could possibly 1v10. Small skill, large skill, it's that insane. One of the only classes that can essentially get away with that, and that's why everyone hates to see a good Sorc in their backline, see it in general. Any kind of small skirmishes, big team fights, it is just a nasty class. Now going into Succession, other half of Sorc, which is the hybrid assassin. The close range assassin also being kind of like a semi-long range mage. So 1v1s in PvE. So essentially this is how Succession Awakening works. Succession lost a bit of its mobility and safety in exchange for just raw damage and more abilities that are kind of mage-like and just overall just more shit to throw at your opponent. So in 1v1s, they are still technically S tier, but it's not S tier by a huge stretch among other classes. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, in terms of 1v1s, they're kind of like in the middle when it comes to S tier. So they're not insanely strong like their sister class, Awakening. Awakening is just, a god 1v1. But in terms of 1v1s, they still can do shit, right? It still has the same pre-Awakening, so therefore they still have similar movements, iframes. The Succession, however, allows you to do shit Awakening didn't really already provide, which was frontals and super armors. And these abilities, essentially you rotate them, you use them a lot to protect yourself. When you're not iframing and dashing around, you use them to essentially fill the gaps of movements that you should have had. But because they didn't give Succession those movements, you kind of have no choice but to rotate them. And you'll find yourself in 1v1s that you actually are allowed to trade people through frontals and essays. Something that Sorc shouldn't really do. It's like not a concept they did in Awakening. So for us to just be protected by frontals and essays while just still melting other people's frontals, blocks, and fucking all this other bullshit, it's pretty strong. Yeah, so essentially you'll find yourself going against certain classes that you actually do pretty well just because you can stay safe behind frontals and essays. A class that can not only be a little bit of an assassin, it's still predominantly assassin, but it also can throw long range abilities if needed. Other nuking abilities that you can try to put in the mix as well as trying to get into the close range combat. Definitely has just like overall like a hybrid kind of feel. It's not strictly 100% assassin sometimes. Like a good 80%, yeah, but then sometimes feels like at 30-40% just feels like a mage. You're just staying in the back throwing long range shit like it's fucking nobody's business. The movement though is definitely not as good as the Awakening. The combos definitely compare. Skill ceiling is not that high, as well as the skill entry is not that high. Succession is essentially the easy version of Awakening, and even then it's still technically hard because, again, it's still Sorc. It's not going to be that much less in terms of skill ceiling, and same with skill entry. But it's still there because, again, same class. Outside of that though, you definitely will find yourself struggling in 1v1s compared to in Awakening, just because it not only feels different, but you also feel awkward not having a block or an S block. So you generally would spend a lot of time trying to figure out how you could just play Succession Sorc in 1v1s, just because it just, sometimes doesn't give you a straightforward feel of what to do. You essentially just have to move around and try to hope you catch your opponents off of their openings with some of your CC abilities, or just throw shit out with essay frontals and melt them that way through their blocks and essays. And discussion of PvE, now personally it's still S tier. I mean, again, everything on Sorc's gonna be S tier, right? I think that's just redundant, but it's S tier. The combos, rotations are a lot smoother in my opinion, because in Awakening you find yourself spamming Violation and just pre-buffing. On this class you pre-buff and you essentially can rotate through a bunch of different abilities that can sometimes be a lot more fun, engaging, interactive, I don't know, whatever way you want to describe it. For me, I'm not a big fan of just spamming the same ability over and over again for an hour. I would like to spam different abilities in different sets and rotations and different orders, kind of like coming up on combos throughout my grind session. So therefore, I think the terms of interest, I think it's a lot funner. Like, it kind of depends though. This is just my personal preference. Some people say they find Awakening grinding funner. Some people say Succession is funner. As far as easy, I mean, ideally, they're both easy. They're just different types of easy. We're comparing the easy of spamming one ability or the easy of just rotating different abilities. Like, it doesn't really matter which order, technically, as so long as you pre-buff, of course. Either or is technically easy. Just kind of depends what kind of easy we're talking. Outside of that though, it gets the job done. Again, doesn't really matter. Does a ton of damage because that's what Succession's like kind of made for. They're made to just be forehead damage fucked. Outside of that though, that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not much about the PvE. It's not entirely too much different from Sorc, but definitely spices things up though. And then the discussion of small scale, large scale. It can be a mage like playstyle, can say in the back, as well as an assassin that plays, up close with iframes and dashes and movements and gets in the back lane, as well as sometimes can be in the mid range and in the front line sometimes, if you had such frontals and essays to deal with it, right? Because they do allow you that. You do have frontals and essays. If you're strong enough, you can tank few abilities. Not to the extent that you're a fucking Valk Guardian Warrior or some other classes. Like, you're not generally supposed to just do, frontline shit, but what I mean is you can stay kind of in between a ball and get away with just fucking going in and out of it, helping your teammates, going from back lane to the front line to the side, like you have a lot of mobility. The best way to describe Succession Sorc in large scale is a class that can simultaneously be like a mini mage, but also still an assassin. The class can go in and out the back line. It can kill people from range, something that Awakening can't do. In other words, Succession is the better large scale in my opinion. Awakening is still good. It's definitely still good S tier when it comes to large scale, but Succession definitely does a lot more in terms of damage and what you can bring to the table, essentially. Because with Sorc Awakening, what you have is you have Dream, you have 50 Grim. In Succession, you have Dream, you have Bloody Calamity, as well as Abyssal Flame, and a few other abilities that actually can be a big deal, but those would just be like the best ones to mention. In large scale, they're definitely a class that makes its presence known, because you do so much damage, it's actually unfunny. To the extent that you essentially can still stay behind your iframes and your frontals and essays, and be able to dish out retarded amount of damage is just fucking, it's fun for me personally. In the comparison to Awakening and Succession, where the Awakening is the, better 1v1er compared to Succession, but Succession is the better large scale GVG kind of small scale fighter as opposed to Awakening. Both can still do pretty good in each other's aspects when it comes to 1v1 and large scale, and when it comes to grinding, they're basically the same. Outside of that though, if you essentially want the 1v1 king and can still grind amazing, you can still do large scale pretty nicely. So if you wanted the class that has the better 1v1 and still is pretty good in grinding in large scale, go Awakening. If you want the class that can still do pretty decent in 1v1 and grinding, but that does a lot better in large scale, small scale, then go Succession. So yeah, that's pretty much Sorc. Hopefully you enjoyed the class. Hopefully it's something up your alley, and if you give it a shot, give it a fair shot. Don't just fucking be a pussy and just play the class for like a couple days and just be like, I'm not feeling it. Give it a solid try and see how you really feel. Outside of that, watch some videos, do some combos, etc. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed that shit. I'm going to be making more Sorc videos, predominantly Succession videos, so be on the lookout for that as well. But yeah, good luck on your journey, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.